Ladies and gentlemen, first I would like to thank the Research Institute of Prometheus, the Chinese Academy of Social Science, and the European University of Cyprus for the invitation to contribute to this conference. If we had this discussion 6 months ago, lots of things we discussed today would be insignificant or maybe on a lower magnitude and scale. The rise of Donald Trump in power and his decision to shift the economic policy towards a different path of what we knew the last decades is not a turning point. It's a seismic shift in global economics and affects not just economy, but the balance of power among great powers of the world. What we face today is not a series of trade disputes, but a fundamental transformation in how power is projected in the 21st century. The United States, seeing its unchallenged dominance of the post-Cold War era slipping away, implements a erratic strategy of economic nationalism that is reshaping the international order. The EU and Cyprus as well, whether we recognize it or not, stands in the middle of this geopolitical earthquake. So I will try to elaborate on three issues: the impact of US policy, the stance of the European Union, and the reaction of Cyprus. So the first question I will try to answer is if the global economic order as we knew it is already dead. The international economic order that has governed global affairs since the end of World War II is undergoing a transformation with profound implications for small states like Cyprus. The Trump administration tariff policies, often misunderstood as just protectionist measures, represent, in fact, the visible proof of a much deeper structural shift in global power dynamics. After World War II, the US-led Bretton Woods system established a rule-based global economy, promoting free trade through General Agreement of Tariffs, later known as World Trade Organization, and promote economic integration. The late 20th century saw rapid globalization with supply chains expanding and emerging markets rising. During that period, the US dollar became the cornerstone of this system, serving as the dominant global reserve and trade currency, a role often called America's exorbitant privilege. This status allowed the US to borrow cheaply, earn higher returns on foreign investments, even export dollar cash without interest obligations. However, this status came with downsides. An overvalued dollar weakened competitiveness in manufacturing and agriculture, contributing to the industrialization and increased disbelief in the local population. Trump's latest tariffs mark a sharp reversal. His trade wars, especially with China, I would argue, disrupt supply chains, provoke retaliations, and weaken the international trade. But these measures are a double-edged sword. While they aim to reduce trade deficits and revive manufacturing, they risk sparking retaliatory trade wars and disrupting supply chains. So Trump is in front of a political dilemma. I underline the term political, as that divides his economy and his electoral basis. To keep global commerce flowing, America must supply dollars to the world, increasing earnings for the elite in the US, but at the same time weakening its own economic stability over time and lowering the living standards for the majority of the people, its labor force, and small and medium enterprises in the United States. So we can describe this as follows. What we are witnessing is the decline of the liberal international order formed after the World War II and its gradual replacement or coexistence by geopolitical competition, even among allies, where economic tools serve as primary instruments of state power that aim to address a series of interests. So what are the reasons behind this decision from the US? The aggressive use of economic instruments serves multiple strategic objectives. First, it aims to reshape competition with China. It aims to decelerate China's technological ascent by restricting access to critical inputs like semiconductors and advanced manufacturing equipment. Second, it seeks to reorient global supply chains away from competitors and towards American-aligned economies. Third, and perhaps most significant for Europe, it represents an effort to restructure transatlantic economic relations and even political relations on terms more favorable to US interests. Trump wants to renegotiate the terms of his affiliation/cooperation with the European Union. Just to remind the latest statements that were made from Trump about how EU take so much gains from the relation with the US. The United States has made a strategic decision. In an era of relative decline, it will use every tool at its disposal to maintain its dominance. This explains why US tariffs were equally severe against the EU and until today are one of the main elements of dispute between US and European Union. Especially if we look to which sectors are being targeted, there are things that we can derive from there. The focus on semiconductors, artificial intelligence, and green technology reveals that this isn't about protecting all industries, it's about controlling the industries of the future. By restricting access to critical technologies while forcing allies to choose sides, the United States is attempting to reshape global supply chains to its advantage. So this brings us to the next question, whether Europe is able to master its own destiny. The European Union finds itself caught in an increasingly uncomfortable strategic dilemma. On one hand, its economic model remains deeply embedded in the structures of globalization. On the other hand, its security architecture remains fundamentally dependent on American power. This tension reflects across multiple dimensions in EU policy. Economically, the EU lags the US and China with low growth, stagflation, rising inequality. Younger generations face housing crisis, high energy costs, while Europe's industry competitiveness declines due to expensive energy compared to global rivals. The green transition, though necessary, requires redesigning to reduce its socioeconomic cost. Critics argue that its current form risks deindustrialization, so the EU must balance environmental goals with economic realism. Internally, divisions persist between North-South. Populism and far-right extremism are rising, fueled by discontent over inequality and migration. Without solidarity in its core, the EU is turning into a dark path. To survive, the EU must reform its economic model, recalibrate the Green Deal, and bridge internal divides. So how vulnerable is Cyprus under these threats? The uncomfortable truth is that our economic model, while successful in calm waters, is dangerously exposed to this new era. There are three structural vulnerabilities that stand out. First, energy dependence remains our most acute vulnerability. As maybe the only EU member state that is still producing electricity mainly from oil, we remain dangerously exposed to global energy market volatility. The consequences are measurable and severe, since our electricity prices consistently rank among the highest in Europe. Our tourism sector, while a vital source of employment and foreign exchange, represents another critical vulnerability. Accounting for nearly a fifth of GDP, this concentration creates systematic risk that is strongly affected from geopolitical tensions and from climate change. If we do not accommodate both of these risks, the future will be challenging. Perhaps most concerning is our declining productive capacity. Agriculture share of GDP has halved since EU accession, while manufacturing has stagnated at 7% of output. The crowding out of our productive base leaves us dangerously dependent on sectors strongly affected from global shocks. And we are precisely we are in an era when the global system is becoming more and more volatile. So how does Cyprus can navigate this situation? We need what might be called smart sovereignty, the ability to act independently where we must do so, while utilizing our European cooperation where we can. In energy, we cannot afford to wait for EU consensus to address our energy emergency, nor to mention that due to European decisions, energy prices and inflation soared in Cyprus. Accelerating the import of gas for electricity purposes, complementary with a comprehensive strategy in the energy sector, should be treated with urgency as first priority. On trade and financial regulation, the EU collective weight gives us protection in confronting American escalating measures. As America's largest trading partner, the EU collectively has real influence, yet EU decision-making remains painfully slow, requiring consensus among 27 nations with divergent interests. So what Cyprus will choose to do so? We face a world where economic tools have become weapons, where alliances are increasingly transactional, and where small states must fight to avoid becoming collateral damage in great power conflicts. The world Cyprus faces today is fundamentally different from that of even a decade ago or even a year ago. The comfortable assumptions of endless globalization that dominated as mainstream mantra over the last decades has given way to an era of raw competition and fragmentation, where economic tools serve as instruments of geopolitical struggle. In this environment, small states cannot afford to be passive observers. So the choice before us, I could say it's a bit brutal. We can continue with business as usual, hoping that the storms will pass by, or we can recognize that the rules have changed and adapt accordingly. This process and this path demands planning, demands investments on infrastructure, demands cooperation with neighbors that are located near but also far away, demands bold vision. It demands leadership, and I could say that Cyprus has a lot to improve in this sector. Thank you very much for your attention and your questions.